Hi, I'm Alec at the 𝑾𝑯𝑨𝑚 Law Firm, where we help families pass their legacies and promote family harmony and reduce taxes. So, one way that we can pass assets to children is outright. And in outright, children get their assets in their own individual name. It's really simple, so that's a real beneficial thing. However, if you have minor children, you cannot pass assets to minor children. That's because if you do that to a minor, it's going to cause what's called a court supervised conservatorship. And those can take a huge financial drain on your estate. And it's very time intensive, which is not what you want. So if you have minor children, you really need to look into other options, trusted ages, and lifetime trusts, which are going to be discussed later in this video. So if you have adult children who are responsible, outright can be a great option. However, there's no asset protection if someone inherits outright. So that could be an issue if the beneficiary is sued, goes bankrupt, maybe gets divorced. It becomes easier for someone to attach to those funds and try to take them away from your child, which can be a problem. Another thing to bring up is that if your child has the assets in their name, they're in control of those assets. They can spend them how they want, or they can gift them to whoever they want to at their death. There's no control on what happens with that asset when it's given outright to a child. So the assets could end up going to an in-law, or they could be spent pretty rapidly. And sometimes these are concerns that people have. So the other option is trusted ages. Trusted ages means when you pass away, the asset goes to a trust for the benefit of your children. If you have multiple children, there's a trust created for each child. So for example, if you have 3 children, there's basically 3 buckets, one for each child, that are created at your death. And these trusts can be created under a will or under a revocable trust. So your child can inherit in a trust whether you have a trust or a will-based estate plan. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, with trusted ages, it terminates once it reaches a certain age. So if a child is older than that age, it's going to pass to them outright. So the idea is that while a child is young, someone else is managing that money and maybe investing it on behalf of the child, so that when the child reaches that certain age when they're older, they can get that asset outright. This can really work out well with minor children or children who are young adults, but they may not manage the money as well as we want them to. So it gives them some time to maybe understand how finances work and maybe get a little more financial literate with some of the decisions, because legally they can inherit when they reach the age 18. That being said, I find a lot of my clients don't want their 18-year-old to inherit the estate, because a lot of times it's not good when an 18-year-old inherits. So again, oftentimes I find a lot of my clients want their children to inherit maybe when they're in their 30s or mid-20s. So that's going to be something that you have to think about if you pick this option. That essentially is kind of the big decision you have to make, is what age do we want this trust to terminate when that child can get the funds outright. So if the child is sued, goes bankrupt, get divorced, the trust does not have the ability to protect against that person who's trying to take away the asset. Now, before it reaches the termination, the trustee can spend what is in that child's trust for the benefit of the child. So sometimes I hear from people, oh, I don't want to lock up these funds until the child turns 35. I want them to be used for education or for them to buy a house. And the funds are available for those children to use. It's just that child is not the one in charge of the asset. We have a trustee who is in charge of managing and using these assets for that child's benefit until they reach that certain age. So that child can go to the trustee and request some of the money be used for maybe a down payment or on a tuition bill. So the big thing is that trustee is just managing that money until we reach that age for when it is conveyed outright to that child. So prior to that termination age, we generally have it set up to go at certain ages, and we stagger those sometimes. For example, we generally have maybe a child gets a third of it at the age of 25. So if that child is 25, that trustee can go ahead and transfer a third of what is in their trust to that child. That is then outright, and that child is able to use those funds how they see fit. Then maybe once that child reaches the age of 30, the trustee gives them another third. And again, that's outright, and then they hold the remainder until they reach the age of 35. One of the large benefits of this is that it's not all or nothing. Unfortunately, we can't predict the future, and we don't know when our children are going to become mature. So there's plenty of 25-year-olds out there that are mature. They understand finances, but we just don't always know. A lot of times I meet with people who have maybe a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we have no idea how they're going to be with money. So we give those children a little more free rein when they get older. The big thing is that we don't give them all of their inheritance without the appropriate supervision, because we want to make sure that the assets are protected for their benefit. So the third best way to pass your assets to your children is in lifetime trusts. So now I'm moving on to the third option. Again, that's lifetime trusts. The people who pick this option are the people who are concerned about asset protection. They want to prevent someone from being able to take these assets that are going to their children. They feel like maybe their child is in a bad marriage, and if it ends, their inheritance is going to drain. Or maybe the amount of money that the child is going to inherit is a large, substantial number. For example, maybe they're inheriting $4 or $5 million, and they don't want anyone to be able to attach to those funds and drain that inheritance. So they want to provide as much asset protection as possible. Now, I also have clients who pick this option for if a child is struggling, maybe with chemical dependency or bankruptcy. They may have creditor problems. They may be disabled and they can't inherit the money in a certain fashion. These lifetime trusts can be very beneficial for children who are in those different situations. Something to know about these lifetime trust options is they can really be any flavor. So there's a lot of customization that we can draft into these trusts to make sure that it works for your estate plan. Now, again, these trusts can be used for children who are very responsible, and the sole reason for these trusts is that we want to have asset protection, because these children are inheriting a large amount of money, and we want to prevent anyone from trying to grab these assets. So we may provide pretty liberal distributions in the distribution language of that trust. We also have trusts that we can draft for children who are going to immediately spend any dime that you give them. So when they get money, they're going to spend it right away. So we use these lifetime trusts to kind of preserve the assets, to make sure it's going to be spread out through their lifetime, and again, protect that asset. So the big thing here is that these trusts can be drafted very, very many different types of ways. Another benefit that parents find with these lifetime trusts is that you can control not only how the assets are spent, but you can control what happens when a child dies. So, for example, if you want the assets to go to your children's children and not to an in-law, we can draft that way accordingly. So that's one of the big benefits, because looking at some of the outright distributions, once that asset goes outright to a child, we really have no control with what that child does with that money. It's going to fall under their estate plan. So the lifetime trust is a way that we can make sure that we're keeping that asset where we want it to go if a child passes away. Thank you for watching.